So I have a criticism of the Bengston method, but it's also a self-criticism. Having consumed presumably all the available information on the technique, there are still so many questions left unanswered in my mind. There are no clear delineations for how to progress the method. How fast is fast enough? What benchmarks to look out for? How much time or energy are needed to gain proficiency in the method? How do you know that you're doing it? Whatever it is. And it's important to emphasize nobody has any idea exactly what it is. But this leads us to my self-criticism, which is my own Western-centric preoccupation with objectivity. See, in the modern Western world, we're obsessed with putting all of our faith, focus, and attention on the objective, on measurements and metrics, science and numbers. On the contrary, our subjective sense of reality is the one that gets massively downplayed. This is the one that gives credence to our intuition, our instinct, our emotions, our gut feelings, as it were, all undeniably real, important, and useful phenomena. As a member of the West, it's these subjective qualities I find maddeningly underdeveloped in myself. The silver lining is that perhaps we're being done a favor by the vague instructions. We're being asked to listen to ourselves, to trust ourselves, to give our subjective experience an audience. Insofar as this whole practice is outside of my comfort zone, I rather welcome the challenge to become more acquainted with my intuition. All that being said, Dr. Bengston rightly encourages us to be skeptical and to avoid belief at all costs. Presumably what we're after are real and verifiable results, and no amount of belief or disbelief should come to bear on the implementation of the method. Now, Dr. Bengston has a lot of insightful commentary on skepticism, so I won't belabor the point, but skepticism is essentially being open to being wrong. Both belief and disbelief are two sides of the same coin. Both are prejudgments intrinsically requiring a measure of faith and an unwillingness to give consideration to alternative explanations. What I'm carrying out here is an experiment, and for the duration of the experiment, I intend to remain firmly rooted in skepticism. Though I have an intuitive sense that there's something here, something of real value and potential, I'm fully prepared to report, after doing my due diligence, that the effects I'd hoped for just didn't come to pass. Now, I don't want to seem like I'm setting myself up for failure. On the contrary, the progress that I've seen thus far is more than encouraging, and the fourth week has been one of the best in that regard. The speed and the fluidity of my image cycling is at an all-time high, and the flow has become quite natural. The sensation of the cycling practice is quite a departure from what it was a month ago. Rather than seeing each image in its full clarity, they tend to blur and meld into one another, almost to the point of not even seeing the images at all, but rather just the flash of a thought. It's almost like a rock skipping across a lake at hyperspeed. While the practice still requires a great deal of concentration, the level of my proficiency is to the point where I can almost enjoy myself whenever I catch the flow just right. Instead of using brute force and willpower to execute the image cycling, I can bask in those original feelings that I had creating my scenes in the first place, except all at once. It's still nothing incredibly profound, but there is a sense of satisfaction doing something that you're considerably skilled at. I do want to touch on an important point. There's an element of letting go when you work up to cycling speeds this fast. It's in our nature to want to cling to each image or to be anxious about whether each image is getting the attention we think that it ought to. But we have to keep in mind speed. The sensation of speed is what we're going for. We spent many hours burning these images onto our brain, and we have to trust that our subconscious mind is having no problem whatsoever recalling these images in full, whether we're aware of it or not. So I'm not so much measuring my speed at this point, but I would estimate I'm making passes through my list in as little as 2 seconds, or 10 images per second. Now I've got the subjective sense that the time is right to move on to the hypercycling phase. So in the next video, we're going to look at what hypercycling is and how to set up your device. This is the phase when we work into hundreds or thousands of images per second. If you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, it'll let you know whenever I put out a new video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you again.